Lily had never felt so alive and yet so completely invisible. That was the strange paradox of being 18 years old in the summer of 1968. The world roared outside a kaleidoscope of change and chaos. But inside her small apartment, surrounded by the comforting crackle of pine, only one voice truly mattered. His music was a shield against the mundane, a vibrant splash of color in her otherwise quiet life. He was a supernova, distant, yet burning so brightly that his light reached even into the darkest corners of her heart. Tonight, that supernova was real. He was here in her city, playing at the Grand Arena, a place she'd only ever seen in flickering black and white newsreels. Her ticket clutched so tightly in her palm that the edges were soft, felt like a golden pass to another dimension. She wasn't close, not by a long shot. Up in the nosebleed seats, Elvis was a glittering speck, a dynamic silhouette against the brilliant stage lights. But even from here, the energy was a palpable wave washing over the thousands packed into the stadium. The air thrummed with anticipation. The murmur of the crowd, a restless ocean, swelled and receded. Then a sudden blinding flash of light, a roar that shook the very foundations of the arena, and there he was, Elvis. He exploded onto the stage, a vision in white, his sequined jumpsuit catching every stray beam of light. Crowd surged, a collective gasp, and then a deafening scream. Lily felt it deep in her bones, a tremor, a vibration that started in her chest and spread through every nerve ending. He moved with an effortless grace, a powerful raw energy that made every other performer in the world seem to stand still. His voice, when it finally hit the microphone, was a rich, velvet caress, a thunderous command, a tender whisper. All at once, he launched into Heartbreak Hotel, then Hound Dog, each song delivered with a passion that seemed to consume him. Lily found herself swaying, singing along, lost in the communal trance. But as the show progressed, a different feeling began to stir within her. It wasn't just admiration, it was a desperate yearning. She wanted him to see her. Just for a second, it was a foolish, childish thought. She knew he was Elvis Presley, the king, and she was just Lily. During a slower number, a ballad that filled the arena with a melancholic beauty, Lily felt a peculiar clarity. He was singing about loneliness, about searching for understanding. And in that moment, something clicked inside her. She wasn't just a fan in the crowd. She felt a shared humanity with the man on stage. It was illogical, impossible, but it felt true. She watched him move, watched him connect with the front rows, shaking hands, throwing scarves, a spark ignited flame. What if she could just reach out? The thought was audacious, terrifying, exhilarating. She dismissed it at first. Ridiculous, impossible. She'd be stopped. Then another thought, clearer and more insistent. What if she didn't? What if she just sat here in her anonymous seat and let this one chance slip away? The music swelled again, faster now, bringing the energy back up. Jailhouse rock. The beat was infectious, primal. The crowd was a pulsing, unified organism. And somewhere in that chaos, a small, stubborn part of Lily decided. Her legs moved before her mind could fully process the decision. She was out of her seat, navigating the narrow aisle, pushing past bewildered strangers. "Excuse me, pardon me." Her voice was lost in the roar, but her determined stride cut through the throng. She wasn't thinking about consequences, only about the magnetic pull of the stage. The distance seemed immense, yet also strangely attainable. Down the steps she went, her heart pounding like a drum solo. She could feel the stares, the confusion, but she didn't care. She was on a mission, fueled by an impulse that felt both reckless and utterly necessary. Security guards, she knew they'd be there, but her tunnel vision was absolute. She saw only the glimmer of his sequined suit, the sway of his hips, the undeniable charisma radiating from him. She reached the lower section, a different world of expensive seats and hushed awe. Here, The fans were closer, but still behind the barricades. Lily didn't pause. She saw a gap, a momentary distraction among the security, perhaps a crowd surge at the front. With a burst of adrenaline, she vaulted over the low railing, landing clumsily on the other side. A gasp rippled through the immediate vicinity. Now she was on the floor in the restricted zone. The stage seemed impossibly close now. Towering, bathed in a celestial glow, her breath hitched in her throat. 2 security guards spotted her, their faces hardening. They started to move slow at first, then picking up speed like predators locking onto prey. But Lily was faster. Or perhaps, fueled by pure desperation, she simply felt like she was. She weaved through the few rows of chairs, a blur of motion. The cheers of the crowd had momentarily died down, replaced by a ripple of murmurs, a collective intake of breath. All eyes were on her. She reached the edge of the stage, a low platform that seemed to beckon her forward. Her hands scrabbled for purchase, her fingers finding a rough edge. With a final surge of strength, she pulled herself up, scrambling onto the sacred ground. The wood felt strangely warm beneath her palms. She was on the stage. The world tilted, the lights were blinding. The roar of the crowd, now a mixture of shock and renewed excitement, crashed over her. And then everything went silent. Elvis. He was right there. He had been mid-song, mid-movement. His arm was raised, his microphone still held aloft, but his eyes, those famously intense, deep blue eyes, were fixed directly on her. The music had stopped. The band, caught off guard, had slowly faded into silence. For a long, agonizing moment, there was only the frantic beat of Lily's heart echoing in her ears, and the piercing gaze of the man who had stopped the world for her. She stood there trembling, disheveled, suddenly acutely aware of the foolishness of her act, the immense chasm between her and him. The security guards were closing in their footsteps, heavy and urgent, on the stage floor. This was it. She was going to be dragged away, humiliated, arrested. Her dream had become a nightmare, but Elvis didn't look angry. He looked surprised. And something else. Something she couldn't quite decipher, a flicker of emotion in his eyes that held her completely captive. The silence on the stage was profound, heavy with the weight of thousands of held breaths. Lily stood frozen like a deer caught in headlights, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. The brilliant stage lights, which moments ago had felt like a beacon, now seemed to expose her in all her foolishness. She could feel the heat radiating from them, and suddenly a cold sweat broke out on her forehead. Her eyes were locked onto Elvis's. He hadn't moved. His hand, still suspended in the air microphone, clutched loosely. His signature, so often a part of his stage persona, was completely absent. Instead, his expression was unreadable, a mixture of surprise and something else. Curiosity, perhaps. Behind her, she heard the heavy thud of footsteps. Security. They were closing in, their shadows long and imposing on the stage floor. Panic, raw and cold, seized her. She wanted to run, to disappear, to simply evaporate into the electrified air. But her feet felt rooted to the spot. "Ma'am, you need to step down." A gruff voice barked from close behind her. A hand reached out, strong and authoritative, grabbing her arm. Lily flinched, pulling away instinctively. She stumbled forward, closer to Elvis, her eyes wide with a desperate plea. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She hadn't fought this far ahead, hadn't imagined this cold, hard reality of being caught. Elvis, seeing the struggle, finally moved. It was a small, almost imperceptible shift, but it drew all eyes to him. He slowly lowered his microphone hand, then raised the other, a gesture of calm. "Hold on there, fellas." His voice, deep and resonant, cut through the tension. It wasn't loud, but it carried an undeniable authority that made the security guards pause. Their hands still hovering near Lily, they looked at him, surprised, then back at the girl. Lily, still trembling, risked a glance over her shoulder. 2 burly guards stood there, bewildered, their initial aggression momentarily checked by the king's intervention. She turned back to Elvis, her gaze imploring. He took a step closer to her, his movement slow and deliberate, almost as if he were approaching a skittish animal. His blue eyes, under the heavy stage makeup, were surprisingly kind. He wasn't looking at her like she was a threat or a lunatic. He was looking at her like she was lost now, "What's all this about, honey?" he asked, his voice softer now, a gentle rumble that seemed to soothe the frantic beat of her heart. He was still several feet away, but his presence was overwhelming. "I just wanted to see you closer." It sounded so stupid. The crowd, which had been silent, began to stir. A few nervous coughs, a whisper here and there, but mostly a rapt attention. They were witnessing something unprecedented, something utterly unscripted. Elvis didn't rush her. He simply stood there, waiting. He exuded an aura of patience that was almost disarming. He wasn't the wild, hip-shaking performer now. He was a man looking at a scared young woman. Finally, a choked whisper escaped Lily's lips. I just wanted to hear you." It sounded pathetic, even to her own ears. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched the corner of Elvis's mouth. It wasn't a mocking smile, but one of understanding. "You heard me, didn't you? I was singing my heart out." He chuckled softly, a low, warm sound. Then his eyes flickered to the security guards. "It's all right, fellas. She ain't got no weapon, just a little overeager, seems like." He turned his attention fully back to Lily. "You didn't mean any harm, did you, darling?" Lily shook her head frantically, tears now streaming freely down her face. No, sir. I'm so sorry. I love your music so much." The words tumbled out, raw and unfiltered. Elvis nodded slowly, his gaze still holding hers. He took another step forward, closing the distance between them. The security guards tensed, but he simply extended his hand, palm up, in an open, inviting gesture. "Well, you certainly got my attention," he said, his voice laced with a gentle humor. "Come on now, let's get you away from these big old fellas. Wouldn't want you to get tangled up." Lily looked at his outstretched hand. It was big, strong, yet offered with such tenderness. It was an invitation, not a command. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, then feeling a surge of something akin to trust, she reached out. Her trembling fingers touched his. His skin was warm, calloused, real. He gently but firmly took her hand, his thumb brushing lightly over her knuckles. He didn't pull her, but rather guided her slowly away from the hovering security guards. Lily felt a strange sense of calm begin to settle over her. She was still on the stage, in front of thousands. But suddenly the chaos had been replaced by a bubble of intimacy created solely by this man. He led her to the very center of the stage, right beside the microphone. The arena lights, which had seemed so harsh, softened around him. The crowd remained silent, watching, mesmerized by this unexpected tableau. "Now," Elvis said, still holding her hand, his voice a low murmur that somehow carried through the vast space. "What's your name, honey?" Lily, barely able to breathe, managed to choke out, "Lily. My name's Lily." He squeezed her hand gently. "It's nice to meet you, Lily. My name's Elvis." Playful sparkle entered his eyes, and a soft ripple of laughter finally broke the silence in the crowd. It was a warm, appreciative sound, not mocking. He still held her hand, and now he turned his body slightly, so they were both facing the audience. Lily felt her cheeks flush. All these people, all these eyes. But somehow, with Elvis by her side, holding her hand, it didn't feel as terrifying as it should have. It felt safe. "All right, everybody," Elvis announced, his voice carrying easily without the microphone. "Looks like we got ourselves a special guest tonight, Lily. Here. She's a big fan, and she just couldn't wait another minute to say hello, could you, Lily?" He winked at her, and Lily, for the first time since rushing the stage, felt a genuine smile touch her lips. The crowd chuckled, a few cheers erupting. The tension had completely dissipated, replaced by an atmosphere of curiosity and warmth. Elvis had, with a few soft words and a gentle touch, completely diffused what could have been a disaster. He hadn't treated her like a security threat, but like a human being, a fan, albeit an incredibly bold one. He still hadn't let go of her hand, and Lily, still in a state of disbelief, found herself wondering what on earth could possibly happen next. The grip of Elvis's hand around hers was steady, warm, and surprisingly comforting. It wasn't the fleeting touch of a celebrity shaking a fan's hand. It was a firm, grounding hold that felt impossibly intimate in front of thousands of people. Lily, still reeling from the immediate aftermath of her impulsive rush, found herself less focused on the overwhelming gaze of the audience, and more on the kind assessing eyes of the man beside her. He had completely taken control of the situation, not with force or anger, but with a quiet authority that was uniquely his. The security guards, having received their unspoken cue, had retreated, slightly still watchful, but no longer a looming threat. The band members who had frozen mid-note now looked expectantly at their leader, ready to follow his lead. Elvis turned slightly, still facing the crowd, but his attention was clearly on Lily. He hadn't let go of her hand. His thumb gently stroked the back of her palm, a small, soothing gesture. "Now, Lily," he said, his voice a low murmur just for her, yet amplified enough for the first few rows to hear. "You came all this way, busted through all that security. Must be something real important you wanted to tell me, or something you wanted to hear." Lily swallowed hard. Her mind was a jumble of emotions: embarrassment, awe, disbelief, and a profound sense of gratitude. She couldn't form a coherent sentence. She just shook her head, tears still clinging to her lashes. "No, sir, I don't know. I'm so sorry." Elvis chuckled softly. "No need to be sorry, darling. You just got a little excited. That's all. Happens to the best of us." Paused, then looked out at the audience, his famous grin flashing briefly. "What do you say, folks? Should we let Lily here stick around for a little bit? She came all this way." A roar erupted from the crowd. Cheers, whistles, applause. It was overwhelmingly positive, a wave of collective goodwill washing over the stage. They were enthralled by this unexpected turn of events, captivated by Elvis's gentle handling of the situation. "See there, Lily, they like you," Elvis said, winking. He then turned back to the audience, raising his free hand palm out to quiet them. The noise subsided, replaced by an expectant hush. All right, settle down now. But it does seem like our Lily here deserves a little something special, don't you think?" He paused for effect, his eyes twinkling. "She risked an awful lot to get up here. So how about we sing her a song just for her?" Lily's breath hitched. A song for her? The thought was so fantastical, so utterly beyond anything she could have imagined, that it felt unreal. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. Elvis seemed to read her expression. He squeezed her hand reassuringly. "What kind of song would you like, Lily? You got a favorite?" Lily's mind went blank. Her favorite? How could she choose? There were so many. Her entire life, his voice had been the soundtrack, a constant source of comfort and joy. But in this moment, under the blinding lights, with his hand in hers, her mind couldn't conjure a single title. I don't know," she stammered, feeling a fresh wave of mortification. She was making a fool of herself. Elvis just smiled a gentle, understanding smile. "That's all right. I got one in mind. One that always makes me feel a little bit better no matter what's going on." He looked out at the band, nodding slightly. "Boys, how about Can't Help Falling in Love?" Collective sigh, a murmur of appreciation swept through the audience. It was a beloved classic, a tender, heartfelt ballad. The band members began to stir the soft, melancholic strains of a guitar filling the sudden silence. Elvis finally released Lily's hand, but only to put his arm gently around her shoulders, pulling her just a fraction closer. It was a protective gesture, making her feel less exposed, more a part of his world, however fleetingly. He leaned down, his voice a low rumble near her ear. "Just stand here with me, darling, and let the music do the talking." He then moved to the microphone stand, pulling it closer to them both, positioning it so that he could sing directly into it, while still having Lily standing right beside him. Kept his arm around her, his fingers resting lightly on her shoulder. The soft, soulful melody began to fill the arena, a wave of warmth washing over the space. Elvis closed his eyes for a moment, taking a breath before opening them and fixing his gaze on Lily. And then he began to sing, "Wise men say only fools rush in." His voice, already legendary, now felt impossibly intimate, directed solely at her. It was rich, resonant, imbued with a depth of emotion that made the lyrics feel profoundly personal. He wasn't performing for the crowd now. He was singing to her, his eyes never leaving hers. Lily felt tears well up again, but these were different. These were tears of overwhelming emotion, of gratitude, of a wonder so profound it made her lightheaded. She had rushed the stage, a foolish, desperate act, and instead of anger, she had found kindness. Instead of humiliation, she had found understanding. And now, the king himself, the voice that had comforted her through so many lonely nights, was singing directly to her. She tried to absorb every note, every word, every nuance of his expression. His eyes, those incredible blue eyes, held hers with a steady, almost tender gaze. It felt like a private conversation, a secret shared between just the two of them, even though thousands of people were watching. Silent and captivated, his voice wrapped around her like a warm blanket, a protective embrace. The world outside of that small circle, illuminated by the spotlights, faded away. There was only the music, his voice, and the unbelievable reality of being right here beside him, the subject of his tender serenade. It was a moment that transcended time and space, a moment that would forever be etched into the very fabric of her soul. Elvis's voice, a velvet caress, filled the air, each note a deliberate personal offering. Wise men say only fools rush in. Paused, a gentle smirk playing on his lips, and his eyes twinkled, a silent acknowledgement of the irony of the lyric, given Lily's dramatic entrance. She felt a blush creep up her neck. But it was a warm blush, not one of shame. He was including her in the joke, making her part of the moment. But I can't help falling in love with you. The final words of the line hung in the air, imbued with a universal tenderness that somehow felt uniquely directed at her. His gaze remained locked on hers, an unwavering connection that bypassed the thousands of screaming fans and the bright light. It was as if they were the only two people in the vast arena. Lily found herself unable to look away. His eyes behind the heavy fringe of his lashes were pools of genuine emotion. She saw no pretense, no performance in them, only a profound, heartfelt sincerity. He wasn't just singing words, he was pouring a part of himself into the song, sharing it with her. The melody swelled, carried by the mournful strains of the steel guitar and the soft, steady rhythm of the drums. Each chord resonated deep within Lily, stirring emotions she hadn't known how to articulate. Loneliness, hope, dreams. The quiet anxieties of a young woman finding her way in the world. All of it seemed to be addressed, acknowledged and soothed by his voice. She felt a strange kind of peace settle over her. The frantic pounding of her heart had softened to a steady beat. The trembling in her limbs had quieted. Standing there on the grand stage beside Elvis Presley felt less like a terrifying expose and more like a gentle, dreamlike embrace. He sang the next verse, his hand still resting lightly on her shoulder. A silent anchor. Shall I stay? Would it be a sin if I can't help falling in love with you? His voice dipped a mournful, questioning tone, then soared full of conviction. He sang with his whole body, his shoulders subtly swaying, his chest rising and falling with each powerful note. Even standing still, he was pure charisma. Lily could feel the sheer power of his presence, but also its unexpected gentleness. He wasn't intimidating, he was protective. He wasn't just a superstar, he was, in this moment, a compassionate soul, reaching out. She watched his lips form the words, mesmerized. She saw the slight furrow in his brow as he poured emotion into the lyrics, the way his eyes would momentarily close as if lost in the feeling of the song, only to open again, always finding hers. It was a connection so profound, so unexpected, that it felt almost sacred. The crowd remained remarkably quiet. A collective breath held. They were witnessing a moment of raw, unscripted humanity, a rare glimpse behind the curtain of superstardom. The concert had transformed from a spectacle into an intimate shared experience. As the song progressed, Lily felt a wave of profound gratitude wash over her, not just for the song or for his kindness, but for being seen, for being acknowledged. For a moment, she wasn't just one face in a sea of thousands. She was Lily, and Elvis was singing to her. It was a validation she hadn't known, she craved so desperately. He reached the bridge, his voice rising in intensity, a crescendo of emotion. Like a river flows surely to the sea, darling, so it goes. Some things are meant to be. His eyes were alight, burning with an almost spiritual fervor. He was a force of nature, a conduit for something beautiful and powerful. Lily felt the warmth of his hand on her shoulder, a tangible reminder that this was real. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't a fantasy played out in her mind. This was happening. She was here on stage with Elvis Presley, and he was singing to her. As he moved into the final chorus, his voice softened again, a tender whisper that wrapped around her heart. Take my hand, take my whole life too, for I can't help falling in love with you. He extended his free hand, not pulling her, but inviting her to take it, to lean into the moment. Lily, eyes still glistening with unshed tears, instinctively reached out her fingers, finding his. Their hands clasped again, a silent pact, a shared understanding. He squeezed her hand gently, his thumb again stroking her knuckles, a silent reassurance. The final notes of the song faded, lingering in the air like sweet perfume. The last guitar chord hung, then dissolved into silence. For a long moment Elvis remained there, his arm around her, his hand holding hers, his gaze still fixed on her face. The silence was broken by a single clap, then another, then a wave of thunderous applause that swept through the arena. It was a roar of appreciation, of awe, of shared emotion. They weren't just clapping for the song, they were clapping for the moment, for the raw vulnerability and unexpected kindness they had just witnessed. Elvis finally broke eye contact, turning his gaze slowly to the roaring crowd, a slight, genuine smile gracing his lips. He raised his hand in a silent acknowledgement of their appreciation, but his other arm remained around Lily, holding her close. He wasn't letting her go yet. The moment, though fading, was not quite over. Lily felt a strange mixture of sorrow that the song had ended, and immense joy that it had happened at all. The roar of the crowd, when it finally broke the spell, was deafening. It wasn't just applause, it was a wave of pure emotion, a collective outpouring of awe and appreciation for the moment they had just witnessed. Lily felt it rumble through the stage floor, through her very bones, but it seemed distant, almost muted compared to the vivid imprint of Elvis's voice still echoing in her ears. He finally released her hand, but his arm remained around her shoulder, a comforting weight. He turned his head slightly, his gaze falling on her face again. His eyes held a gentle warmth, and he offered her a small, private smile. It was a smile that seemed to say, "See, we did it. That was for you." Lily's eyes were still brimming, and a stray tear traced a path down her cheek. She was utterly overwhelmed, completely immersed in the profound impact of the song. Every word, every note had felt like a direct message, a melody crafted solely for her heart. The lyrics of "Can't Help Falling in Love" had taken on a new, deeper meaning. When he sang "Wise men say only fools rush in," she had felt a pang of self-consciousness, but his playful wink had immediately dispelled it, transforming her foolish act into something endearing, almost brave. And then, "But I can't help falling in love with you." He wasn't saying he was in love with her, of course not, but in that moment for her it had been about the love for the music, the love for the connection, the love for the sheer magic he brought into the world. It was a symbolic embrace, a beautiful acknowledgement of her audacious leap of faith. The song had stripped away all the layers of her self-doubt, her insecurities. She had often felt like an outsider, a quiet observer of life, longing for something more. And here, in front of thousands, Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, had made her feel seen. He had sung to her, not as a faceless fan, but as Lily, a young woman who for a moment mattered more than anyone else in the room. His voice, already so powerful, had been imbued with an almost ethereal quality when directed only at her. It had wrapped around her like a warm blanket, a protective cocoon against the world. She had felt every vibration in the floorboards beneath her feet, every tremor in her own chest as her heart resonated with his powerful baritone. She thought about the struggles she'd faced lately, the quiet anxieties about her future, the feeling of being misunderstood by her family, the loneliness that sometimes crept into her evenings, and in that song in his voice she had found a strange sort of solace. It was as if he was telling her without words that it was okay to feel things deeply, to yearn for connection, to even be a little foolish sometimes. He had sung about taking a hand, taking a whole life too, but for Lily, it was an invitation to take her own life into her hands, to embrace the moments of connection, to not be afraid to reach out. The song was a reminder that some things, like the river flowing to the sea, were just meant to be. Maybe her impulsive rush to the stage, as reckless as it was meant to be too. She looked at him truly, looked at him for the first time without the lens of overwhelming star-struck awe. She saw the sweat beading on his brow, the slight tremor in his hand that held the microphone, the genuine kindness in his eyes. He wasn't just a larger-than-life icon. He was a human being with a profound capacity for empathy. He released her shoulder, and the absence of his touch was a small pang. But then he took a step back, still facing the roaring crowd, and gave them a slow, appreciative bow. The cheers swelled again, a wall of sound. He then turned back to Lily, his smile radiating warmth. He leaned in, speaking just loud enough for her to hear over the din. "Well, Lily, that was mighty brave of you. Hope you got what you came for." Lily nodded, completely speechless. Her voice was still stuck in her throat, choked by the lingering emotion. She could only manage a small, wobbly smile. He seemed to understand. He reached out and gently brushed a stray strand of hair from her face, a small, tender gesture that made her heart flutter. "You be careful going back, all right, and you keep on listening to that music here." He gave her shoulder a final gentle pat, then took a step back, signaling to the security guards, who had been patiently waiting. They moved forward, not with the initial aggressive intent, but with a respectful air. One of them, a man with a surprisingly kind face, offered Lily his hand. Lily looked at Elvis one last time, gave her another small nod, a silent farewell, a lingering connection that promised to live forever in her memory. Then with a deep breath she turned and took the security guard's outstretched hand. As she was gently guided towards the side of the stage, she risked a final glance back. Elvis was already turning to the band, speaking to them, a signal that the show would go on. The lights seemed to dim just slightly around him, then brighten as the next song began, a powerful upbeat number that jolted the crowd back into their frenzied excitement. But for Lily, the energy had shifted. She was no longer just an anonymous face. In the crowd, she was the girl Elvis sang to. The song's embrace, though brief, felt like it would last a lifetime. Transition from the intense, intimate bubble on stage to the mundane reality of the backstage area was jarring. One moment, Lily was enveloped in Elvis's powerful voice, his kind eyes, the electric charge of being chosen. The next, she was being gently but firmly guided down a short set of steps, away from the blinding lights and roaring crowd, into the dim, utilitarian world behind the scenes. The air backstage was different. It smelled of dust, stale cigarette smoke, and something metallic like equipment. The noise of the arena was muffled here, a distant thrumming. The security guard, the one with the surprisingly kind face, held her arm lightly, his grip professional but not unkind. "All right, miss, let's get you out of the way," he said, his voice gruff but not harsh. He led her down a narrow corridor, past equipment cases, discarded wires, and the hurried movements of crew members. Lily's mind was still reeling. Her body felt light, almost floaty, as if she were walking on air. She tried to process what had just happened, but her thoughts were a jumbled mess of disbelief and overwhelming emotion. She could still feel the warmth of Elvis's hand on hers, the ghost of his arm around her shoulder. His voice, singing "Can't Help Falling in Love," was replaying in her head, every syllable crystal clear. They reached a small, sparsely furnished room. It looked like a temporary office or a waiting area. A few folding chairs, a metal desk, a water cooler. The security guard ushered her inside. He closed the door, leaving her alone in the quiet, sterile space. Lily sank onto one of the folding chairs, her legs suddenly feeling weak. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to contain the tremor that ran through her body. It was over. The magical, impossible moment was done. And now the reality was setting in. What would happen to her? Would she be arrested? Fined, banned, and frightened in her stomach. But beneath the fear, a powerful current of awe still surged. She had met him. He had sung to her. He had been kind. She sat there for what felt like an eternity, but it was probably only a few minutes. The muffled sounds of the concert continued from beyond the walls, the roar of the crowd, the thumping bass of another song. She could hear Elvis's voice now singing to the masses again. His performance resumed. It felt strange to be so close, yet so completely removed from the energy she had just been a part of. The door opened again and a man walked in. He was older, sharply dressed, with a weary but shrewd look in his eyes. He carried a clipboard. "Miss Lily, is it?" he said, his voice calm and professional. "I'm Colonel Parker's assistant. We just need to get some information from you." Lily nodded, her throat still tight. "Yes, sir." He sat opposite her, his gaze assessing. "That was quite an entrance you made out there. Not something we see every day." He didn't sound angry, merely factual. "Elvis was very gracious with you." "He was," Lily managed to whisper, her voice still hoarse with emotion. "He was so kind." The assistant made a note on his clipboard. "Indeed, we appreciate that." He diffused the situation so effectively. "Now we need your full name, address, and contact information. We also need Mr. Presley. Do you have any history of erratic behavior?" Lily shook her head vehemently. "No." "Oh, no, sir. Nothing like that. I love his music so much. I didn't mean any harm. I just got carried away. It was foolish. I know." "I'm so sorry." He studied her for a moment. His body just studied her for a moment. Just an impulsive one. He wrote something else down. "You understand that this kind of behavior cannot be tolerated. It's a serious security breach." "Yes, sir," Lily said, her voice small. "I understand. I won't ever do it again." He nodded slowly. "All right, we won't press charges this time. Mr. Presley himself indicated he didn't want you to be punished, but you will be escorted out of the arena, and we'll have to ask you not to attend any future Elvis Presley concerts, just to ensure there are no repeat incidents." Pang of disappointment hit Lily, but it was quickly overshadowed by relief. 2 years without seeing him live felt like a harsh sentence, but it was far better than jail. She nodded her agreement as he finished writing. He cleared his throat. "However," he said, and Lily's head snapped up, hope flickering. "Mr. Presley did ask me to give you something, a small token." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a pristine white silk scarf. It was soft, almost luminous. In the dim light, Lily recognized it instantly. It was one of the scarves Elvis threw to the crowd during his performances, soaked with his sweat and cologne. A highly coveted souvenir, but this one was different. "He specifically chose this one for you," the assistant said, handing it to her. "He wore it tonight," he said. "Tell Lily to keep it, and to remember that even in a crowd, sometimes one person can shine brightest." Lily took the scarf, her fingers trembling. It was still warm, carrying the faint scent of his cologne. It felt impossibly precious, a tangible link to that unbelievable moment. A tear slipped down her cheek, unbidden. It wasn't just a scarf, it was a message. A confirmation that the connection had been real, that he had seen her, truly seen her. "Thank you," she whispered, clutching the scarf to her chest. "Thank you so much." The assistant stood up. "All right, "Lily, we'll have a guard escort you safely out of the venue. Now, don't try to sneak back in." He gave her a small, almost sympathetic nod. Lily stood clutching the scarf like a lifeline. She followed the guard, who led her through a labyrinth of back corridors, eventually emerging into the cool night air outside the arena, far from the main entrance. The streets were already starting to empty as the concert wound down. She stood there under the vast star-strewn sky, clutching the silk scarf. The magic of the stage was gone, the roar of the crowd fading to a distant hum. But in her hand, she held a piece of it, a physical manifestation of a moment that had defied all logic, a testament to the unexpected kindness of a king. She knew with a certainty that settled deep in her soul that her life would never be quite the same. Cold night air hit Lily's face with a surprising force, a stark contrast to the humid, electrified atmosphere of the arena. One moment she was submerged in the unbelievable glow of the stage. The next, she was standing on a deserted street curb, clutching a silk scarf like a fragile dream. The security guard who had escorted her offered a curt nod and disappeared back into the anonymous service entrance of the building. She was alone, utterly, completely alone in the quiet aftermath of the biggest, most astonishing moment of her life. The stadium loomed behind her, a dark, silent giant, still humming faintly with residual energy. From inside, she could hear the muffled, distant strains of Elvis's final song, a powerful closing number. It sounded triumphant, majestic, carrying on without her. Lily felt a strange mix of emotions. There was the lingering adrenaline making her feel jumpy and lightheaded. There was the profound sense of disbelief. Had that really just happened? And then there was a quiet, almost reverent awe, tinged with a touch of melancholy that the magic had ended. She brought the scarf up to her face. It smelled faintly of him, a blend of sweat, cologne, and something else, something uniquely Elvis, like the raw energy of his performance captured in fabric. It was soft against her cheek, a tangible piece of the extraordinary. Her legs felt like jelly. She found a nearby bus stop bench and sank onto it, pulling the scarf closer to her chest. She closed her eyes, trying to rewind the last hour to replay every single second, the rush, the sheer unthinking impulsiveness of it. She remembered the blinding lights, the sudden halt of the music, the gasps from the crowd. Then his eyes, those piercing blue eyes that had held her captive, not with anger, but with an almost gentle curiosity. His voice, "What's all this about, honey?" So calm, so unexpectedly kind. His hand, strong, calloused, yet so tender as he had taken hers, leading her to the center of the stage, away from the intimidating security guards, and then the song, "Can't Help Falling in Love," sung directly to her, his gaze unwavering, his voice, a personal serenade. The way the lyrics, meant for a lover, had been transformed into a message of unexpected connection, of seeing another's soul. She remembered the feeling of his arm around her shoulder, a protective embrace that had made her feel safe even in front of thousands, his small, genuine smile, his private wink, the way he had addressed her as Lily, making her feel like a person, not just a frantic fan, and the scarf, his parting gift, chosen specifically for her. Tell Lily to keep it, and to remember that even in a crowd, sometimes one person can shine brightest. The words echoed in her mind, a powerful validation. He had understood. He had seen the quiet yearning in her, the desire to be acknowledged, to feel special. A small, tearful laugh escaped her. It was so utterly unbelievable. If she tried to explain it to anyone, they would think she was crazy. They would say it was a dream, a hallucination. But the scarf clutched in her hand was undeniable proof. She thought about her life before tonight. It had been quiet, predictable, sometimes a little lonely. She worked part-time at the local diner, saved her money, dreamed of going to art school, but always felt a nagging doubt that she wasn't good enough, brave enough. Elvis's music had been her escape, her comfort. It had filled her small room with a vibrancy her life sometimes lacked. Tonight she had plunged headfirst into that vibrancy. She had taken an impossible leap, and instead of falling into humiliation, she had been caught by kindness. Elvis hadn't just sung a song, he had given her a moment of pure, unadulterated human connection, a moment of profound acceptance. He had shown her that vulnerability, even recklessness, could sometimes lead to unexpected grace. The implications of it started to sink. She had been on stage with Elvis Presley. This wasn't something that just happened to people. This was a story, a legend, a moment that would be talked about. She was going to be in the papers, on the news. Her quiet life was about to be turned upside down. A new surge of anxiety hit her, but it was different this time. It wasn't the fear of being caught, but the apprehension of what came next. How would her parents react? Her friends? Would they be proud? Horrified? Would they even believe her? She had whatever came next. She had this moment, this incredible, unforgettable night. It was more than just a memory. It was a feeling, a deep shift within her. She felt braver somehow, more visible. As if Elvis, with his powerful voice and gentle hand, had reached out and pulled her into the light. The last of the crowd began to filter out of the arena. A noisy stream of people laughing and chatting, buzzing with the afterglow of the concert. Lily watched them, a detached observer. They had seen it too, but they hadn't felt it the way she had. They hadn't been on the stage. She knew. She needed to get home. Her bus was due soon. But as she stood up, her legs still a little wobbly, she felt a quiet strength begin to bloom in her chest. The experience hadn't just been about meeting a different version of herself, a version that, even for a few wild minutes, had dared to reach for the stars and had impossibly caught one. The next morning, Lily woke up to a world that felt both familiar and profoundly changed. Sunlight streamed through her bedroom window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, a typical summer morning. But tucked under her pillow was the soft white silk scarf, a tangible reminder that yesterday had not been a dream. She crept out of bed, still feeling a little dazed. Downstairs, she could hear the faint murmur of her parents' voices and the clatter of breakfast dishes. She knew the moment was coming. She walked into the kitchen, her heart pounding. Her mother was at the stove flipping pancakes, and her father was at the table engrossed in the morning newspaper. As Lily sat down, she saw it. On the front page, above the fold, was a grainy but unmistakable photo. Elvis, on stage, his arm around a young woman. The headline screamed, "Fan rushes stage. Elvis calms chaos with kindness." Her father's head snapped up. His eyes, usually mild, were wide with disbelief. Then a flicker of something unreadable. He looked from the newspaper to Lily, then back again. "Lily Marie Stevens," he said, his voice slow and deliberate. Is this you?" Her mother turned, spatula in hand, her jaw dropping as she saw the paper. "Oh my goodness gracious, Lily. What on earth?" Lily felt her cheeks flush. There was no hiding it now. "Yes, Dad, it's me." She swallowed hard. Parents were stunned. A mixture of shock and concern etched on their faces. They had always known she loved Elvis, but this was beyond anything they could have imagined. For the next hour, she recounted the story carefully, explaining the impulse, the fear, and then the incredible kindness Elvis had shown her. She told them about him, stopping the security, about him, talking to her, asking her name, and finally about him singing, "Can't Help Falling in Love," just for her. She didn't forget to mention the scarf and the Colonel's assistant's words. Even in a crowd, sometimes one person can shine brightest. Her parents listened, their initial shock slowly morphing into a complex blend of worry, pride, and utter astonishment. Her mother, ever practical, worried about the legal implications, the safety. Her father, a man of few words, just kept shaking his head, a small, awestruck smile playing on his lips. "Well, I'll be," her dad finally said, folding the newspaper carefully. "Elvis Presley himself, on stage, singing to our Lily." He looked at her with a newfound respect. That boy's got a good heart. The news, of course, spread like wildfire immediately. The phone started ringing almost immediately. Friends from school called, their voices a mixture of disbelief and frantic excitement. "Is it true, Lily? Did you really get on stage with Elvis?" Her quiet life was suddenly very, very loud. The local news picked up the story, then the national papers. For a few days, Lily was a minor celebrity in her hometown. People she barely knew would stop her on the street asking about the concert, asking what Elvis was really like. She answered patiently, always emphasizing his kindness, his humanity. But the biggest impact was on Lily herself. The experience had cracked something open inside her. The initial fear and embarrassment faded, replaced by a surge of quiet confidence. She had faced her fear, acted on an insane impulse, and instead of being punished, she had been met with grace. She had been seen by someone who in her eyes was larger than life. That week, a small package arrived at her door. Inside was a framed photo. It was a professional shot taken by a concert photographer of that very moment. Elvis on stage, his arm around her, his eyes fixed on her as he sang. Beside it was a small note on official TCB production stationery. It read, "To Lily, it was a memorable moment for all of us. Keep shining, Elvis P." Lily traced the words, her fingers lingering on his signature. He hadn't forgotten. He had thought of her, even amidst his busy schedule. The note, simple as it was, confirmed everything. It wasn't just a fleeting encounter, it was a true connection. The photo became her most treasured possession. She hung it on her bedroom wall, a constant reminder of that impossible night. It wasn't just a picture. It was a symbol of courage, of vulnerability, of unexpected kindness. Before the concert, Lily had often felt trapped by her own shyness, by the unspoken expectations of a quiet life. She had dreamed of being an artist, of creating beautiful things, but always felt held back by a lack of self-belief. Now something had shifted. The experience had taught her that sometimes you had to take a leap. Sometimes the most unexpected moments could lead to the most profound change. She started sketching again with a newfound fervor. She experimented with bold colors, with dynamic compositions. Her art, once hesitant, now began to reflect the vibrant, almost explosive energy of that night. She still listened to Elvis's music, of course, but it was different now. It was no longer just an escape. It was a reminder of the power of a single voice, a single act of kindness to change a life. The ripple effect of that night was just beginning, spreading outwards, transforming her quiet world in ways she couldn't yet fully comprehend. Weeks turned into months. The initial flurry of attention surrounding Lily's stage rush eventually died down, and new excitements. Life, for the most part, returned to its familiar rhythm. But for Lily, nothing was truly the same. The framed photo of her and Elvis on stage held pride of place on her bedside table, a constant, tangible reminder of the night that had irrevocably altered her perspective. The white silk scarf, now clean and carefully pressed, resided in a special box brought out only for quiet, contemplative moments. She kept her promise to Colonel Parker's assistant. She didn't try to attend any more Elvis concerts, though the desire often tugged at her. Instead, she followed his career from afar, buying every new record, reading every article, feeling a deeper, more personal connection to his journey. When Elvis released his triumphant '68 comeback special in December, Lily watched it glued to the television, tears in her eyes, feeling a surge of pride and joy for the man who had shown her such kindness. She knew a little secret about the heart behind the legend. The biggest change, however, was in Lily herself. The shy, often hesitant girl was slowly, steadily blossoming. That night on stage had given her a profound sense of validation, a feeling of being seen that resonated deep within her. It had taught her that it was okay to be bold, to be emotional, to even be a little reckless sometimes. If it came from a place of genuine passion, her art, once a private hobby, now became a driving force. She found herself less afraid to experiment, to express the swirling emotions that the experience had unlocked. Her canvases exploded with vibrant colors, capturing the energy of a live performance, the intensity of a gaze, the raw emotion of a song. She painted portraits of people caught in moments of intense feeling, trying to capture the kind of profound human connection she had experienced. She started attending a local art class, something she had always wanted to do but had been too nervous to pursue. Her teacher, a kind but discerning woman, immediately recognized Lily's newfound passion and talent. "There's a unique depth to your work, Lily," her teacher once remarked, studying a vibrant, abstract piece. "It feels like you've experienced something truly profound that you're trying to convey." Lily just smiled, a quiet, secret knowledge shining in her eyes. She also found herself more open in her personal life. She talked more freely with her parents, sharing her dreams and fears in a way she hadn't before. She even started initiating conversations with classmates she used to shy away from, finding a new confidence in expressing her opinions. The girl, who had felt invisible, now carried herself with a quiet, undeniable presence. One afternoon, sitting in her room, listening to Elvis on the radio, Lily felt an overwhelming urge to express her gratitude. It wasn't enough to just keep the scarf and the photo. She wanted him to know the lasting impact his kindness had had. She pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and a new pen and began to write. "Dear Mr. Presley, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I wanted to thank you again for what you did that night at the concert in June. I was the girl who rushed the stage, Lily. I know what I did was wrong and dangerous, and I truly apologize for disrupting your show, but what you did for me, it was more than just being kind. It changed something inside me. Before that night, I felt a little lost, like I was just floating through life, not really making a mark. Your music was always there for me, a comfort and an escape. But then on stage, when you sang to me, when you looked at me like I mattered, it was like you saw something in me that I didn't even know was there. The words your assistant told me, even in a crowd, sometimes one person can shine brightest, have stayed with me. They've helped me find a new courage. I've started painting more, really pursuing my art, and I feel a passion I didn't know I had. I'm learning to be braver, to believe in myself more. You are more than just a king to me, Mr. Presley. You are a reminder that kindness can be the most powerful force in the world. Thank you for seeing me, for your unbelievable grace, and for making me believe that some things are truly meant to be. Sincerely and with deepest gratitude, Lily Stevens." She folded the letter carefully, placed it in an envelope, and addressed it to his management company. She knew it was a long shot, that it might never reach him. But writing it, putting her feelings into words, felt like a necessary closure, a way to acknowledge the profound gift she had received. She didn't expect a reply. The thought of him reading it even for a moment was enough. The letter wasn't about getting something back from him. It was about honoring the transformation within herself. She was on a new path, and the memory of that incredible night was the guiding light, a quiet beacon in her journey towards a more confident, more vibrant future. Years passed. The 1960s faded into the 70s, and the world kept spinning, changing, evolving. Lily Stevens, the impulsive girl who once rushed the stage, had grown into a confident, talented young woman. She had indeed pursued her passion for art, graduating from art school with honors, her portfolio filled with pieces that pulsated with emotion and color. She often found herself drawn to themes of connection, vulnerability, and the drama and power of a single moment. The white silk scarf still rested in its special box, and the framed photo remained on her bedside table. They were more than just memorabilia. They were relics of a turning point, reminders of a kindness that had shaped her trajectory. She never received a reply to her letter to Elvis. She hadn't truly expected one. King was a busy man, surrounded by a whirlwind of fame and demands, but the act of writing it had been cathartic, a final acknowledgement of the profound impact he had on her life. Elvis continued to be a colossal figure in the music world, his influence unwavering. Lily followed his career, celebrating his successes and feeling a pang of sadness when news of his struggles reached the papers. She held onto the image of the man who had looked into her eyes and offered her such unexpected grace, rather than the more troubled public persona that sometimes emerged. One quiet afternoon many years later, Lily was at her easel, lost in her work. Her studio, filled with the scent of turpentine and oil paint, was her sanctuary. She was working on a piece that depicted a lone figure bathed in light, reaching out to an unseen hand. It was an abstract representation of connection, of empathy, of a bridge built between two souls. The radio played softly in the background, a local station dedicated to classic hits. A familiar voice, deep and resonant, filled the room. It was him. "Can't Help Falling in Love." Lily paused, brush in hand. She closed her eyes, letting the melody wash over her. Still had the power to transport her back instantly to that electrified stage. She could feel the warmth of his hand, hear the gentle sincerity in his voice, see the twinkle in his eyes. It was a bittersweet feeling now. Elvis had passed away several years prior, leaving behind a legacy that transcended music. The world had mourned its king. Lily had mourned him, too, not just as a global icon, but as a man who had, for a few extraordinary minutes, touched her life with unparalleled kindness. But listening to the song now, she didn't feel just sorrow. His kindness that night had planted a seed within her, a seed of self-belief and courage. It had shown her that she, a quiet, ordinary girl, could in fact shine, that it was worth taking risks, even if they seemed crazy, if it meant reaching for something truly meaningful. That moment on stage wasn't just a fan experience, it was a life lesson. It was a testament to the power of human connection, to the simple Baidu act of seeing another person and responding with empathy. Elvis Presley, the king, could have easily dismissed her, had her removed without a second thought. Instead, he had paused, engaged, and offered her a gift more precious than any material possession. The gift of being seen, of being valued, of being sung to. Lily dipped her brush into a vibrant blue, the color of his eyes that night, and added a bold stroke to her canvas. The magic of that moment hadn't faded. It had deepened, transformed, becoming an integral part of who she was. She thought about the thousands of people in that arena, witnessing a moment that was both public spectacle and deeply private. She thought about how many lives Elvis had touched, not just with his music but with his spirit. And she knew that her story, while unique, was perhaps just one of countless tales of how his presence, his music, and his unexpected generosity had left an indelible mark on individual hearts. The song faded out on the radio, leaving a comfortable silence in the studio. Lily stepped back from her canvas, admiring the burgeoning piece. It wasn't about Elvis directly, but it was inspired by him, by the profound encounter that had forever altered the course of her life. The world might remember her as the girl who rushed the stage, by footnote in Elvis Presley's legendary career. But for Lily, it was much more. It was the night the king of rock and roll had stopped his world for her, held her hand, looked into her eyes, and with a simple, heartfelt song, taught her how to truly begin to live in her own. The magic, she realized, wasn't just on the stage. It was in the enduring warmth of human connection, a warmth that continued to glow brightly within her years and decades later. And that was a song that would never truly end.